was thinking the other day about time that family and I were on vacation, and in front of this hotel that we were staying at was I think one of the, I don't know if it's the oldest or second oldest trees in this entire state of California. The type of tree that it is escaping me. But what I found so fascinating was not just of um, usually you have this vision of what you can experience when you see the enormity of a huge tree that extends not only high but incredibly wide. But what you normally don't see are the roots. What you normally don't see is what of really its origin, of where it came from, of where it started. But this particular tree had so many of its roots, huge roots, roots you could actually climb on, that were actually above the ground. And I was thinking about that because it's so fascinating to me of how often we move through life unable to see where someone comes from. Now, it may seem like a bit of a leap for you to go from the roots of a tree to a human being. It's not a big leap for me. It dawns on me that I'm not necessarily everyone. At the same time, it it brought up something inside of me that really helps to solidify in many ways what we can't see when we're looking at another human being, what we can't see necessarily when we are aware of um, someone else's behavior, when we are witnessing, really in many ways, how the old parts of themselves manifest themselves in terms of what you can see, in terms of what you can hear, in terms of what you can feel and sense sometimes. Through their body language, how they carry themselves in the world, how they express themselves, through their behaviors, through the way they dress, through the way they live. We can see all of that. But what we can't necessarily see is what's underneath that, what's below the surface of that. Now, this tree was enormous, so you could really say, oh, well, now I understand how this tree could be this big and this powerful and this strong and withstand and be so old, because these roots of just what we could now see were so enormous that it made sense. But it doesn't always make sense when we hear another person or see another person, experience another person, and we really can be so quick to judge based on what they say, based upon how they present themselves, how they express themselves. And we all do it. We're faced with that on a daily basis. We sometimes are caught off guard. It could be how somebody talks to us or doesn't talk to us in when we're checking out at the supermarket. There are times where I sit there and go, wow, that's interesting. The person didn't say, I'm saying thank you to that person I just spent money with, and they're not even thanking me. And where I really want to go to, right in that moment, is just naturally, authentically, organically in that moment going, what's up with them? Like, my God. And I want to really catch myself going to this place of judgment. But I do catch myself and I do stop myself and I don't go too far down that hole. Why? Because I have an understanding of what may be below the surface. And that, in fact, is really principled on why I believe it's so important for every single person to have an effective inside game. Because here's the thing. You can't really understand, you can't really comprehend, you can't really empathize with another human being, to really understand where they came from, to really understand their roots, until you do your own work. Until you understand, begin to understand why you do what you do, why you say what you say, and are then on top of that able to then forgive yourself for any judgments that you possibly are holding against yourself Until you go through that dynamic, until you understand that part of your inside game and the importance of it, then you can't really truly experience empathy. And what some might attempt to pass off as empathy is really someone's fear of being alone, of being unwanted, convinced that separate and apart from anyone or anything except perhaps nature, that they don't matter. So they tolerate another person's behavior. They tolerate another person's thinking. They tolerate another person's interaction with them and with others as somehow okay. They rationalize it as somehow okay. Because they refuse to stand up and say, this isn't okay. And a primary reason of that is because a lot of times people have not done their own work. They haven't gone to the depths of truly, genuinely understanding themselves. Because when you learn and experience and do your own work of realizing what you're actually capable of what you're actually capable of saying, what you're actually capable of doing, how far you're actually willing to take something, perhaps how far you've gone in the past to do so. Until you understand that within yourself, about yourself, and for yourself, you can't possibly hold that space for another human being. You can't possibly feel or understand what it is to empathize with another human being. Now, you may sympathize with them, completely different. Sympathize is really to basically go, yeah, I understand, so when like a sympathy card, where you're basically just convincing another person that you understand what they're going through because you've gone through something similar. That's not empathy. Empathy is the compassion and the understanding that you've been through something similar, but also the respect and the dignity that you afford another human being, knowing that that relationship, whatever it is that is upsetting their peace, whatever it is that's throwing off their balance within themselves, that's causing that sense of loss or causing that sense of grief, is unique to them. That's empathy. When we don't pretend to know what somebody else is experiencing exactly, because we're not them and they're not us. But yet we've gone to the depths of doing our own work, of this understanding that in the process of doing our own work, that we've discovered that we can say awful things, that we have perhaps done awful things, or that we've thought about doing or saying those things. And once we have that understanding that I am no different than the next person, given a certain set of circumstances, given a certain set of beliefs, given a certain environment that would either invite that energy or reject it, given that set of circumstances, then that's when we begin to understand, that's when we begin to comprehend of what it means to be able to empathize with somebody. Because we don't know their loss, but we do know loss. We don't know their feelings, but we also do know our own. We identify their pain because we have been through pain. We don't make it the same, but we can identify it because we understand what it is to be in pain. We understand trauma. We understand the struggles of life, the regrets, the thoughts that we've all shared and entertained from time to time that have thrown us off our game. So what we can see when we look at another person, what someone is willing to show us through their behavior, through their expressions, through their body language, through their dress, through their the words that come out of their mouths, the way they see the world. That, in essence, no pun intended, is the tip of the iceberg. It's not the ice that exists below it that gives it its ultimate strength. that has that level of pull on them. No, I don't know the history of a tree. I don't know the things that it went through, but I can imagine what it was witness to in its own growth. And I can see the strength that those roots have, and I understand that the strength that our own roots have in many ways in holding us back, in holding on to only letting people see what we want them to see. But when we don't find that relatability, we can't find that empathy. We can't discover that. Why? Because for many of us, the unwillingness to do one's own work is the root cause. I've watched it, and it's so fascinating. I've watched it in the past several days with business, with personal relationships, with family relationships and dynamics. I'm ever so present to the power of projection. The unwillingness to look at oneself and instead to project to the outside world a certain set of beliefs, a certain set of ideas. And what's fascinating is it's so mind-boggling to people when it goes on for them, when they experience it, when somebody's accusing them of something, when they're going through an experience and they cannot grasp for 1 second the logic behind what is coming at them, what is being brought to them. And they're grasping for the logic, and they replay it over and over in their mind. I don't understand. That doesn't make any sense. Well, of course it doesn't make any sense. Because in the process of projection, it isn't about it making sense to you. It's about making sense to the person who's projecting onto you, the person who's refusing to see the depths of their own humanity. The person who's refusing to bear the pain and sit with the pain of being alone, of the feeling or the thought that they are somehow unwanted, that they don't matter, that they're unlovable, that they don't deserve, that they don't matter. But when you understand just how powerful those roots are for someone, and because you have done your own work, you're not excusing their behavior, but what you're doing is you're allowing them grace, you're allowing them empathy. You don't necessarily want to stand in their crosshairs. You don't necessarily want to engage with them. You don't necessarily want to have to convince them of anything. But what you can do within yourself is to see and hold a place of empathy for them until such time, or maybe never, that they're able to do that for themselves. And it isn't important if that happens. You'd like it to happen. I would love everybody to be able to look at themselves in a deeper way and to understand that what they're projecting onto someone is really their own fears and doubts and insecurities, and how really that isn't really very fair to do. But I understand it. I understand where it comes from. Why? Because I've done it before. I've participated in it before. I've played the victim card before. And it wasn't until I found the freedom on the other side of that, by willing to look and see that who I am and what I'm about isn't that scary picture that I had held of myself somehow. That somehow I was going to discover this god-awful truth about myself. To find out it was really in many ways the exact opposite. I just didn't know how to express it. So I don't excuse the behavior of someone who perhaps is acting inappropriately or being unkind or inconsiderate. I'm not going to stand there. I'm not going to sit there and feel the need to take it just because I have some understanding of where it must come from them. That's not my role. But I can walk away and not take it on. I can walk away and not carry it with me. I can walk away and not make it about me. And I can go through my own from time to time, deepening of my inside game, of going through and forgiving myself for any lingering judgments that I may be holding on to about myself, to forgive myself for any lingering judgments I'm naturally holding on to about others as well, to keep digging deeper for that freedom, to have the understanding of what someone must be going through in order to feel that way, think that way, experience life that way, see me that way. And allow them grace wherever they are. I'm no better than anybody else. I do believe it's important to be kind. I do believe it's important to take ownership and responsibility of the places and spaces inside that need greater applications of loving and healing, to not then project those onto other people. And from time to time, like others, I will slip. And I'll own it. And I'll be fine to be called on it. Because empathy is the way. It allows us to experience life at a deeper level and give another a grace to do the same. To understand the roots that have held them back, the strength, the sheer strength of that trauma, the sheer strength of that loss that they experienced, the sheer strength of all of those feelings and all the things that perhaps happened to them in their past that I necessarily didn't go through, but I can have compassion for. And understand that some of those roots are really, really strong and they don't want to let go. But those roots also have the ability to grow new branches, for new flowers to bloom, for new ways of being in the world externally to manifest. In the process of forgiving myself, I can forgive others. In the process of forgiving others, I can foresee a better future. These are the things that need to matter to us, my perspective. These are the things that we need to be considerate of as we move forward, to not put our stuff on other people. And to every time catch ourselves or be called on it, to be able to look at it honestly, earnestly, and be able to say, you know what, that's not okay. That is actually a projection. There's a deeper level of work for me to do here. And I'm going to keep on my inside game, and I'm going to keep at my inside game, because I understand that if what I want is a life that's sustainable, that isn't up and down and all over the place and sideways and filled with drama and filled with uncertainty, that if I want something that's sustainable and rich and loving and powerful and dynamic and all of these things that are so important to me, and I know are so important to other people, if I want that, then I have to be willing to look wherever I need to look. That I have to be willing to do the work that's necessary underneath, behind the scenes, from my past. The stuff that people can't see. And I don't need to tell the story about everything. I don't need to tell the story about the past and everything. And the reason I'm this way is this. But I can tell a story as I used to feel and think and see and believe and judge this way. And the freedom that I found through a deeper level of understanding within myself, a deeper level of loving myself, I'm able to love and empathize with other people and see the world in a clearer picture of how I want to be and do in the world. And that energy, that's a frequency that's carried with me that people are going to be attracted to. I'm going to seek out and find other people who fall in line with that. And I'm going to be able to see when I come up against energy that doesn't match that and kindly move away from it. This is what This is what allows us to live that richer life. This is why empathy is so important. And we can't get there if we first can't forgive ourselves and learn to love ourselves enough to be able to allow someone else the grace and the dignity of their own process and experience, and to choose how we want to move forward. I'm Mitch Newman. We'll see you again next time.